Okay, hi everyone. Hi everybody who's here in the Jordan Center, and welcome everyone who's watching us via Zoom. This is NY Jordan Center for Advanced Study of Russia. Hopefully, we'll have more people coming in the next minutes. Today we have a great guest. A good friend of mine and a great lawyer, Pavel Chikov. Pavel, hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, hi everyone.
Yes, Pavel Chikov, he's 44. I was myself surprised to get to know that he's 44. I thought that, he was much younger. I'm sorry, Pavel. But, for anyone who's over 60, you look, like a kid. Pavel Chikov is a very well-known human rights activist and lawyer in Russia. He's the chair, he's founder and chair of the AGORA International Human Rights Group. He graduated from law school in Kazan in 2000. Kazan, of course, is a Russian federation. He got his Master of Public Administration from the University of North Dakota in 2001. And he did his PhD in international law and European law, also in Kazan State University. Am I correct that it is State University, Pavel?
Yes, it is.
And today, we AGORA International Human Rights Group is not just the one which is monitoring the situation with the human rights abuse in the Russian Federation, but also its lawyers support all kind of people who get under repressions from the side of the state in the country. I myself and and a lot of my friends, we enjoyed support from the side of Pavel Chikov and his excellent lawyers. So Pasha, thank you so much for your support. Now I would, I'm going to ask Pavel to describe the situation with the contemporary level of repressions in the Russian Federation, because you can hear all kind of and you can read a lot of stuff both in Russian and the international press, and some people compare it to 1937, Stalin's purges. Some people say that we're going somewhere in a late Brezhnev period, etc. So if I ask you, where are we now in terms of the level of repressions in Russia? Where are we now, Pavel?
I would say that we are at the beginning of 80s with the war in Afghanistan going on, with the very in the middle of the Cold War with the West, with a certain iron curtain around the country already, with people trying to leave the country, to escape. Not everyone is allowed to. Some people are being criminally prosecuted and put in jail for their expressions against the current political regime. There is a bunch of repressive laws and widespread secret services that are trying to control, manipulate, influence, and collect information about all activities that are not supportive by the government. So everyone is waiting for some hope and something that is changing, but the current situation could be even worse than that time, because that time was called Zastoy, which meant no fresh air, but still no fear and no severe pressure. Currently, we see, and the whole society in Russia is under, is afraid of any new steps of the government. We are in the start of military mobilization, and the whole government, the whole country is rapidly moving to the military state. So it used to be police state. Now we're moving from police state to military state, with all features of this. So it started in February when the war began, with the package of military censorship initiatives and laws. And currently we have more than 100 people being criminally persecuted for their expressions against the war, which is considered as a distribution of military fake information.
I'm sorry, can you, once again, can you say this? How many people now are under, already accused of violating these, so-called, military censorship laws, which were passed on, I believe, on March 5th, 2022, 2 weeks ago?
Yes, well, in general, there are more than 300 people being criminally persecuted in Russia for anti-military activity. 100 of, say it again?
That's criminal, you say that's...
Yes, criminal, yes, criminal.
Okay, and what's the, first of all, let's start with the, with the general public, the absolute majority of those who are accused of spreading of disinformation about the Russian army, these are so-called, we call in Russia administrative cases. Here in the United States, some people suggest to call this misdemeanor, and you suggested to call it minor cases. How many of them?
More than 4,000.
4,000. All across the Russian Federation or predominantly in the states?
Yes, all around.
All around. Can you just provide some stats like, demographics, whether there is any, whether it's, city periphery, or whether, more cases in urban areas, less cases in small town and villages, which are the major Putin's constituents. Is there any stats like that?
I would say that about 15% of all these are from Moscow, which is a big portion. But all the rest are widespread. Almost all Russian regions are involved. So in some regions there are more of such cases, and some less. But in general, Moscow is on the top of the hill as always. But I would say that less in the North Caucasus national republics. Clearly,
so
no one in Chechnya, of course, no one in Chechnya, and very few in other places. But we should also understand that, for example, in Kabardino-Balkaria or Dagestan, there are other ways of anti-military protests. For example, people just, cross the federal roads and stop any traffic on it if something goes wrong from their perspective. So they don't do sole pickets in front of the administration buildings. They just stop federal traffic on the roads or close the border with Azerbaijan, for example, something like that. So there are other or they come to the police station and they take out their relatives from police by
Yes, you are
force.
talking already about mobilization cases, right?
Not only,
Not only.
but yes, but recent weeks there've been a wide protest in Dagestan. Yes.
Right, but that's if, these were protests against this mobilization people who were called to go to the front. However, returning back to these misdemeanor cases or minor charges. So you said 4,000 cases. Who are the major recipients of those cases? Why? And why there are so many of them? 4,000 people, what kind of disinformation do they spread?
Look, the number of people who published critical information about the war and the government decisions since February, there are way more than 4,000. There are dozens of thousands. And I would even say why the number is so low, actually, and this is also a question, and probably it could be much bigger. I think that there are certain limits, the bureaucratic limits with police and the courts that cannot make more cases. And now the number are getting down. The peak was in May, June, probably since July. The number of new cases is getting down, and currently from September, everyone is busy with mobilization, and this is not now on the top of the agenda.
Okay. Among those 4,000 cases, there's a majority of journalists who got this, or it doesn't matter,
No, it's just regular people.
Regular.
The majority are regular people. I don't know exactly about who these people are. I know better about those who are being criminally persecuted, and I can tell you more about this because these are just 100 people, and I can tell you who they are.
Yes, please do. So you said that there are more than 300 criminal cases. Also, it's also based on so-called disinformation of spread of disinformation about the Russian army. Is that correct?
No. In general, there are 300 cases against people who are being persecuted for anti-military protest. It could be, for example, vandalism, hooliganism, and other articles of the criminal code. But the biggest share is this military disinformation. New article that was adopted in early March with the package of these military censorship laws. And there are 107 known people who are being criminally persecuted. So each third of everyone being criminally persecuted is under this article of the criminal code. And here, the statistics is the following: 1/3 of them are not in Russia, so they are being persecuted in absentia. Some of them are being arrested, also in absentia, being accused. Some of them got their property arrested. Among those are mostly well-known people, like Russian writer Dmitry Gluchovsky, or well-known journalists like Alexander Nevzorov, or well-known top bloggers like Belotsarkovskaya, and a few Ukrainians, like Ukrainian journalist Dmitry Gardon, for example, and some others. So these are mostly Russian journalists, Andrei Soldatov, Michael Naki, Ruslan Leviev. I mean, they're all public well-known people, public cases and well-known people. 1/3 are arrested and they are in the detention centers or already convicted, right? For example, the municipal parliamentary Andrei Gorinov or Alexei Yashin, who is in custody waiting for the trial.
Yashin and Alexei Gorinov.
Yes, Ilya Yashin. About 33, 34 people are being arrested, and the rest are not arrested, but they are in Russia waiting for the trial. So they are either under house arrest or under certain restrictions not to leave their home, their cities, etc. By now we have about a dozen of people that have been found guilty already. All of them, they were found guilty by the courts, and only 2 got imprisonment, and only 1 stays in prison. This is already mentioned Gorinov. Another guy, he got only 6 months and he has already been released. So frankly saying, we have only 1 person that have been convicted to imprisonment under this article, and everyone is feared to be persecuted, and this is very tricky.
I'm sorry, I'm a little bit, confused. So we have Alexei Gorinov, who got 6 years and 11 months in prison time for spreading the disinformation about the Russian army. He was the first who was convicted and sent to jail on this, this new act. Now we have Ilya Yashin, who is in jail, and he's expecting his trial by the end of the this year, and he can get all the way up to 5 years in jail. There is also Yevgenia Roizman, another well-known politician, who also, by the way, both Yashin and Roizman, they got 3 misdemeanor cases first, and then, criminal cases were initiated against them. But Roizman is expecting, he's under investigation. He has, he's at home. He's under, moral home arrest. There is Marina Ovsyannikova. Also, she had 3 misdemeanor cases first, and then a criminal case was initiated against her. Now, she's now, she's on a run. Do I understand right that others, their investigation is going nowhere, or it hasn't been finished, or what's happening to others?
Well, first I should notice that Roizman is being criminally prosecuted under another article, and he is not expecting to be put in jail because this is a very minor offense, up to 3 years of imprisonment, and he will unlikely get it. That's why he is under house arrest. So I would not expect him to be put in jail after the conviction, unlike Yashin, because Yashin most likely will face imprisonment, but we'll see how this goes. What we see with other cases, our lawyers are working on 35 such cases around the country. Some of them have been already finished, and people didn't get imprisonment. They got probation, they got fines, something like that. We see that investigators, they have certain flexibility and certain space for negotiations and options that they can choose, as well as the courts. So our main task is not to put people in jail, to have them free. That's why we are keeping silence on most of these cases, trying to succeed on the case-by-case basis around the country. That's why not all of us hear these cases all the time on media. This is one of the reasons. We also see that courts are in some places, courts do not want to deal with such cases. They're kicking them back to the investigators. Actually, the current mobilization allows us lawyers to I hope to succeed with the results of on the majority of cases.
What do you mean by succeed? You think that you will be able to set these people free?
Yes, that's the task. I mean, we're not talking about found them not guilty in the Russian, judiciary.
Right.
Let's be realists, but not being put in jail or the best option would be to get them out from the custody. That would be the success.
So you presume that they will be found guilty, right?
Yes.
But you hope that Russian courts are not going to give them a jail time. Is that right?
Yes. Yes, and sometimes we even witness when the prosecutors or the judges even they ask to plead guilty to let people free, to stay out.
That's not the wood. I hope that you are not too optimistic, but because I see, I'm in constant communication with Ilya Yashin, and basically, they just, I just got a letter from him. His case is completed. He got the, there is one volume. It means, it's a small folder like that. And there is expertise, language expertise, the transcript of the video he did on the military crimes allegedly committed by the Russian military in Bucha. And basically that's it. However, he's already, he's sitting in Bucha jail, and most likely he's facing all the way up to 5 years in jail.
That's true. I mean, I don't know exactly the case of Ilya Yashin because this is not our lawyers who are working on it, but I know other cases, and from perspective of investigators, they are not hard cases. What they do, they take the text or the video that says that Russian soldiers commit this and that, or Russian army, doesn't matter, or National Guards, whatever. So commit this and that. And then they put the text from the official release from the Russian Ministry of Defense telling that this is not true. We were not doing this. I mean, we didn't do this. And this is true, and this is disinformation. They sometimes ask for linguists to compare these two texts, but this is just to have another evidence of guilt, and that's it. I mean, nobody is trying to investigate what the hell actually happened in Bucha or Kramatorsk or Mariupol or in Irpin or other places, because all the cases that started in spring or in summer, they are related to one of these 4 or 5 events that happened. That's it. Until Russian Ministry of Defense tells something about the particular topic, you're free to speak about it, but when it does, you cannot under risk of being criminally prosecuted. The another thing is that we don't see any new cases during last month, or at least one, I think. So the number of these criminal cases is also getting down. I don't know exactly why, what is the reason, but I also think that everyone is busy with the mobilization right now, not about this. I mean, it's two different processes ongoing in Russia right now.
Very interesting. You know, all my 4 cases were based on the fact that we reported what Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation didn't have it on its website. We lost all 4 cases. And after that, you strongly advised me to leave the country, saying that I was going to get a criminal case. I didn't. So is it to say that there is some change, or I haven't yet? Is it to say that there is some change in the way a repressive machine is proceeding?
I do believe that all public persons like you and others who are being criminally prosecuted, they are being picked one by one, and it was a political decision behind each of these cases. So to initiate a criminal case against Gluchovsky or Nevzorov, I think it was not even Bastrykin who decided that. That was the presidential administration guys who decided that, for sure. I'm pretty sure about that, because the message was political, not criminal or not legal. That's why probably you're happy enough not to be enlisted by the presidential administration so far, as well as me personally. But I was very cautious about what I was talking about and publishing. So this is not, I mean, the logic is not straightforward, and the logic is not like you said that, and that's why you're being prosecuted. No, it's because of you saying something, and you normally get a message somehow, and your 4 administrative cases with fines, these are your message. These were your messages, Yevgenia. So and that was, you know, the warning, and that's why I insisted to leave the country, because I know how to read these signals. And there are a few other well-known people who left the country during the last half a year because I also insisted, and because they also got such signals.
Okay, so do you expect that there will be, you know, some other cases, or, you know, there will be development of, you know, of these military censorship laws? Or, you know, as you said, that, you know, you see the declining of these criminal cases based on this military censorship laws, which were passed into, were adopted by the State Duma in the second week of the war. Is it because of this mobilization, or is it because that the Russian state is getting weaker because it's losing the war, or why?
No, I don't think that it's because it's getting weaker. First of all law enforcement agencies are working. All these guys, all siloviki, are in Russia. They are not fighting. The majority of them, they are ready to, you know, for house searches and for arrests and for all this. I am absolutely sure that the potential of criminal repressions is very high, and I would expect it's growing. But at the same time, the main idea, main task of the Kremlin is not to put everyone in jail. The main task is to threaten everyone, to stop street protests. Look, Navalny started an era of street protests in March 2017, and it lasted, we could say, till November of this year. The last massive street protests in Russia happened this November when the war started. Since then, there are no any more protests in Russia. And we don't see them coming back in coming future, at least, coming months. Next, the military censorship laws. They actually succeeded because they kicked off a lot of journalists, including yourself, and including the teams of journalists out of the country. They they sterilized the Russian public sphere. They allowed to control. I mean, people can access to alternative information only if they use VPNs or through the Telegram channels. That's it. They don't have access to Facebook, to Instagram, to Twitter. They have access only to VKontakte, normally with 60 million people, and Telegram. Actually, Telegram is the only window for people not using VPNs or proxy servers to alternative information. But if you look at the top of Russian language, Russian Telegram channels, you know who is on the top? Who is the number one? Ramzan Kadyrov with 3 million people.
The leader of Chechnya, right? Colonel.
Yes.
Colonel General, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So the top Russian Telegram channels are all propagandists, and they all cover military special operation with all this manner. So talking about the military censorship laws, they succeeded from the Kremlin's perspective. They don't need to bother with another hundreds of criminal cases because the task is solved, the aim reached. So, and another thing, now everyone is busy with the war, with the mobilization, and with the counterattacks from the Ukrainian army, and what to do with all these referenda, with all these new occupied territories. Clearly, the Kremlin wants to make all these new regions the same as Crimea in 2014 and later. So they want to establish the law enforcement system, Russian law enforcement and judiciary there, and lawyers. And we are talking internally about how to react on that, because we were hesitating about starting our work in Crimea in 2014, but we decided to do that since Sentsov case and others. And now it is also a question how to proceed there.
In the newly annexed territories of Ukraine.
Exactly, because it will be Russian army torturing people there, and will be Russian judges putting them in jail, and etc. So whether there should be Russian human rights lawyers working or not, I don't know. Still unsolved question.
Right. So, Pavel, I understand that, it's a very vague, field, I mean, it's very difficult to make any predictions, if possible at all. However, where do you think, what's the direction of the repressive machine is now? Is it going, to more punitive charges, or whether, they're so preoccupied with the losses in Ukraine that, they don't really care about, Russian opposition, whatever left, because almost nobody left. And so, what is your
exactly? I mean, the focus of new criminal repressions is changing right now, because as you're right, saying that there is no Russian opposition anymore. There are no independent media and journalists. There are no civic activists. There are no such objects of these criminal repressions. But the focus is changing to those. I'm sure that next wave of the repressions will be about those who refuse to go to the war or to run from there. And that's why the State Duma adopted new package of the criminal laws in summer, with all these, refusals, or how to say it in English, I don't know, those who refuse to go into deserters from the battlefield, etc. So I'm sure that will be more such cases. But at the same time, I know, I understand that the law enforcement system is ready for massive repressions. And they want to be useful for the regime, and they want to show that they are ready. And in general, I mean, it might be much more criminal cases all around the country. And I even feel that they are being stopped from the presidential administration not to go forward. Because, for example, from the very beginning of the war in February, we worked on a dozen of cases when the soldiers and National Guards refused to go to Ukraine or return from Ukraine. And we are talking about thousands of people, because some cases were about 400, 500 people. No one criminal case against them during 7 months so far. So it was clearly, although there were all legal grounds for these criminal cases, but they were stopped. I mean, it was an order not to initiate these cases. And this order can be changed in a day. And we can face dozens of criminal cases against National Guard soldiers and new mobilized people that refuse to go or run from the battlefield, or go to Ukraine or some other, or crossing the border or something like that. So I'm sure that will soon, very soon, will be more of these cases. It will be like pacifist cases, I don't know, during Vietnam War.
Actually, let me, take a step back so I will understand. I remember, that you wrote in your Telegram blog that after Putin announced mobilization, so-called partial mobilization, right? Agora got almost 13,000, requests from different, people across the country who were trying to figure out, what are their options. At the same time, you also wrote that they were initiated just one case against a person, a male, of course, because, predominantly, in Russian Federation is a male population which are subject to the draft. So So one person, and he was acquitted. Am I right?
Well, yes, you are right, but still, the case is not over so far. The Moscow took it from Penza, and they are thinking right now what to do with the case, and our lawyer is trying to figure out what's going on. But yes, in general, we don't have any criminal cases so far.
Right.
So far. Why? Well, there is a formal restrictions by the Russian Supreme Court because mobilization has never happened before, and this criminal article, the article of the Criminal Code, was only about conscripts.
Mm-hmm.
And the Russian Supreme Court told that it explained to the Russian courts that this criminal article can be used only on conscripts, meaning that mobilization is a different procedure and it cannot be used under mobilization. So until the criminal code is changed, or the Supreme Court announces another explanation, there are no legal grounds to criminally persecute people who refuse to be mobilized. But since they are mobilized, they become military men, and they can be criminally persecuted if they refuse to comply with the order of their commanders.
Okay. By saying that mobilization never happened before, you mean in the Russian Federation, because the previous mobilization happened in 1941 when Soviet Union was invaded by the Nazi Germany. Yeah.
Sure, but we are talking about current active
Okay.
legislation in Russia. So I mean,
so there isn't to say that it's totally not legally defined field, or the field
absolutely. Absolutely. It was only one law about mobilization for several years, which was just adopted because the Russian constitution says that it can be military state and mobilization. That's why there is a law on military state and there is a law on mobilization. The military state was not announced. Never and until now, but mobilization was announced on the 21st of September for the first time ever, and there are no bylaws, no practice, no procedures. The military commissariats didn't know how to behave. I mean, it was a nightmare, and it's still a nightmare because all these presidential degrees to exclude these people and these people from the mobilization are ongoing. And currently there are at least 7 bills in Russian parliament to change the law on mobilization, because all the scandals and all the tension in public during last 3 weeks.
When you say military state, you mean martial law?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Probably, I will ask you last question, then, I will ask people from the audience, both virtual and present here in the NYU Jordan's Center for Advanced Study of Russia, to come up with their questions. But, my question is the following. Your understanding, what's going to happen, in the field of repressions in Russia? Are we proceeding towards the kind of terror that existed under Stalin, or what is your understanding, how this will proceed?
Well, I'm not a political science expert. I'm just a lawyer, okay, human rights lawyer. But I would say that we should dance from the intentions of Vladimir Putin and his close circles. And I think the intention is currently only one, to stay in power. I mean, the main intention is to stay in power. The second intention, keeping in mind all the current circumstances and conditions, is to squeeze from the very complicated situation they put themselves in during last 7 months and even before. So if they would need repressions to solve these tasks, they would inevitably use it, for sure. Another thing is that we've never seen that they can move to another direction. So all what we know about Putin and his decisions and policies is going further and further on escalation and getting harder and harder. So this means that there is no expectations of that the situation will be getting better, unfortunately. And the question will be, and everything is now solved, I would say, on the battlefield, mostly. So we are all kind of hostages of what will happen on the battlefield. And not only between Ukrainian and Russian armies, but also NATO, military support, and from the West, and all these military and diplomatic negotiations that are going on around the war. This would be the source and the main reason of what will happen internally, domestically in Russia. So now repressions are not the main task, they are just the possible mean in the current military focus of the Kremlin. That's what I would say.
Okay, so to sum up, Putin reached his goals. He put in jail those politicians, or in jail or under house arrest. He put those politicians who were able to bring people on the streets, like Navalny, like Yashin, like Roizman. He kicked out those journalists who dared to speak truth to power and who were able, to keep their publication going. He kicked out, also, the whole newsrooms out of the country. So basically, those people who don't have access to VPN, they are stuck with Telegram, and Telegram is very successful in promoting those Telegram blogs, which promote, lies like, Kadyrov does, or like, so-called military correspondents doing, etc. And you suggest that the focus of Kremlin right now is the war in Ukraine and battlefield, and so they have to get people, mobilized as many can afford to the battlefield, and that's what they're concerned about. Is that right?
Yes,
okay,
absolutely
good.
Correct.
Okay, so now, please, your questions, and I'd be happy, to let's address these questions to Pavel. Is anyone here who would like? Yes, please.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm Natalia Last, like a postdoc here at the Jordan Center. And so I found it really interesting what you said about these dilemmas that human rights activists and lawyers face when they want to work on this new occupied territories, to defend people there. And I'm curious if you could expand a little bit more on this topic, like maybe like to refer to your experience as a Crimea, and like what problems exactly do you see there in, you know, like working in these territories? Because it's not only, I mean, I would say it might not be not only on like defending those people, and like those human rights lawyers might be like the only option for them, like to get some defense, but also like, do you see your role in terms of, you know, documenting war crimes committed by the Russians on those next territories, that after that you can, you know, potentially, you know, transfer and communicate to the international community and to the international lawyers? Yeah, thank you.
Okay, should I respond?
Yes, of course.
Okay.
I mean, basically the question was whether, you know, you and your group and others are going to participate in investigating of the crimes committed by the Russian army on the battlefield, you know, in Ukraine.
No, but also defend those people who might be persecuted in those territories.
Okay. You mean
that,
people from Azov, like, you know, just 200 Azov
not just
soldiers
Azov, but just like Pavel says that like one of the goals of the Russian regime may be to extend the judicial system.
In the newly annexed territories of Ukraine.
Yes, and in this case, it's like the only options that those people who are persecuted, like if like the Russian system is the only options they have. So in this case, I think, you know, like the role of people like Pavel like would be crucial. Like, what would be any other option for those people to find, you know, lawyers or advocates?
It was a very sensitive issue 8 years ago when the Crimea was occupied, because, for example, our friends and partners, Ukrainian human rights organizations, they, in the majority, they didn't want Russian human rights lawyers working in Crimea because, from their perspective, that would legitimize occupation. Initially, they started on the position that any attempts from Russian lawyers to participate in the court hearings by the Russian judiciary in Crimea and in any investigative steps by FSB or police or investigative committee in Crimea was an attempt, or was legitimizing these institutions in Crimea. And it was a tension between us. We overcame that tension finally, but the case on Oleg Sentsov group was a good illustration, because they've been tortured and they've been detained, and then they spent a couple of weeks in Crimea with FSB, and then moved to Lefortovo in Moscow. And it was a clear example of the necessity of the lawyers that should be from the very beginning in the case, at least to stop possible tortures. There was also a case with some Ukrainian military men captured during the war, and they stayed in close to Donetsk, and they were supposed to be faced trial in the Donetsk Supreme Court, and there was a lawyer. I mean, there are lawyers from the Ukrainian times. There are lawyers there. And there was a kind of quasi-legal system in all these people republics, with courts, investigators, and police and lawyers. And currently, the idea of the Kremlin is this normalization or Crimization of these newly occupied territories. They want to make the same. They would like to make the same there, and this raises the question whether the lawyers should be there. And we even discussed the possibility of one of our lawyers, two of our lawyers, going to Donetsk. But with all these, rockets and bombings around, I stopped them because of the security issues. I think that we will respond on the demand, and if we receive certain messages and complaints that people need a lawyer, we will decide to go. And it's also a question because in Crimea, for example, there is a good team of Crimean Tatar lawyers. They are working. They've been staying there for years, and they are still working. They are working on the Crimean Tatar cases, but also not only on them. And they consider Crimea as their territory, where Crimean Tatars live. That's why they kind of legitimize their stay and their legal work over there. With all these. Kherson, Donetsk, Luhansk, and others, I have no clue how this will go. And definitely the Ukrainian army aims not to allow Kremlin to normalize the situation over there. So it will be still a question. As to the collecting of evidences, this is not normally what we are doing. Because we are working on the cases. So these are other guys who are collecting, and actually the majority of them are on the Ukrainian side, and there are a lot of lawyers collecting evidences along with Ukrainian law enforcement officers and with the International Criminal Court guys and etc. I mean, there are a bunch of evidences already, and we will face a lot of criminal procedures on the international level in coming years against Russian authorities for sure. I mean, there will not be lack of evidences for them.
Okay, I just want to, for those who just joined us, I want to remind that, this is, the NYU Journal Center for Advanced Study of Russia, and we are talking with Pavel Chikov, the founder of the AGORA International Human Rights Group, who conducted the major, who are defending the political prisoners in Russia on major cases. Now, I also want to say to for those who are not very much familiar with the Oleg Sentsov case. Oleg Sentsov was a famous Ukrainian filmmaker. He authored the movie called Gamer, and it was very successful. So when Russians annexed Crimea, occupied Crimea, Oleg Sentsov and some of his supporters, they were accused of trying to bomb the office of the United Russia or something like that, or am I right, Pavel? Mm-hmm. So, and he and 2 or 3 of his colleagues, they were arrested, moved to Moscow. Oleg Sentsov was sentenced to more than 20 years in the maximum security prison. He was taken to one of the toughest maximum security prison in the Russian Federation, in the Russian far north, Belly Ice. That's right. I have no idea.
Actually, yeah, it's on the
like
north.
That. Anyway, somewhere in very, very north, and he went on hunger strike, and he was on hunger strike almost 2 months. Anyway, and then he was pardoned, or he was exchanged. He was pardoned.
formally he was pardoned, but no, he was exchanged. One of his team members was pardoned. Gennady Afanasyev, he was pardoned by Putin. Others have been exchanged to some FSB or GRU guys. I don't know who were they.
Ukraine, right?
3 years ago, I think it was. So he spent 5 years in Russian prison.
Yeah, and I believe now he joined the Ukrainian army and is fighting for the Ukrainian freedom as part of the Russian army. Okay, there is a question from Anonymous. Do you believe the designation of Russian state sponsor of terrorism might encourage the protests in Russia and bring the regime change closer? Just to say that, the European Parliament I believe it was yesterday, it happened yesterday, voted Russian state to be a state sponsor of terrorism state. So the question is whether these will encourage protests in Russia and bring the regime change closer.
Well, first of all, it was not the European Parliament, it was the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe.
I'm sorry, you're
that's a different place, and these guys have always been very politically active and critical towards the Kremlin and Moscow never reacted properly. But I mean, we should consider this as a political message from the Council of Europe, from the parliamentaries of the Council of Europe countries, nothing more. This is not a position of the Council of Europe even. Second, no protests in Russia in coming future, whatever happens. Well, until, I don't know, the guy dies or something like that, or I don't know, the coup or something like that, but no protests for sure. So, I mean, this is not something very serious happened, unfortunately. And Yevgenia, we have a few questions in the chat.
Yes, that's exactly what, I started asking questions from the chat. There is another question from Agnia Tolokaite. I'm sorry if I pronounce it wrong. Are human rights lawyers facing any oppression or suppression by the state? What kind? If they are not facing any serious opposition from the state, is it because the lawyers are very careful not to upset the state, i.e. dancing around Putin and his administration?
Yes, we're always dancing around Putin and his administration, for 20 years so far. That's what we are actually doing. Well, no one can feel safe now in Russia. And it's been for years. Actually, today the European Court of Human Rights published a judgment on AGORA against Russia case that started 13 years ago with the police search in our office. And interrogations and criminal prosecution of myself. So, it's been, for decade or 2 decades now. We are facing some pressure, between the dances with the Kremlin. So what that's happening all the time. And yes, we are lawyers and we know how to behave ourselves and how to minimize the risks. And this is risk management in a contemporary Russia all the time for us. Plus, we lawyers, we defend others. That's why we have to be safe ourselves to the maximum we can. Otherwise, we will not be able to help Yevgenia, Albats, and all other people that need legal support. That's our dances. With
but I have to, for the purpose of the full disclosure and transparency, neither I nor any of my people, we never paid a cent to Agora. They defend us pro bono, just on the basis that they consider us to be accused on political stances. Okay, my good friend Catherine Fitzpatrick. Hi, Catherine. Thank you very much for joining us. Catherine Fitzpatrick was a translator of my book on KGB. That's how we know each other. Yes. What is happening to those soldiers who refused to fight already when deployed and got the stamp deserter in their passport? And for those refusing mobilization, is there a danger they could be prosecuted for disparagement of the army?
The deserters, they've been just fired, kicked off the army, and nothing else, which is good. I mean, we were waiting criminal prosecution, which never happened. For thousands of them, actually. And now, since the mobilization was announced, the situation changed, and many of them are being forcibly dragged to the front again. Yes, they can be prosecuted anytime. That's what I actually told during last hour. This is the main risk for them, and we are now prepared for dozens of such criminal cases, and we will be working on these cases. We are ready to work on these cases. We just made a call this morning that everyone who refused to fight because don't want to fight and being prosecuted can come to us, and we will provide them lawyers.
Good for you. Any questions from the audience? Yes, Sasha, please.
Hi, I'm Sasha Patolnik. You already know me. I'm the program administrator at the Jordan Center. I have a question. I was wondering what you expect, if anything, to happen to soldiers who have taken videos of themselves complaining about the state of the Russian army, saying that they're refusing to fight, or people who have taken videos of themselves refusing to be mobilized.
No such cases so far. So they can be, but we don't see any signs of them being prosecuted so far. And I think that with all these, smartphones, with all these new soldiers, we will watch a lot of that videos in coming future. A lot of all the missions, all the mistakes, all the bad things that are going on in the Russian army right now, all the conflicts, all dirt from the ground will be all around the internet globally.
Yeah, as people say, this war is probably, arguably, the most documented war in the world. May I ask you, Russian law does allow for alternative service, right?
Mm-hmm.
If someone doesn't want to carry a weapon on whatever basis, religious or whatever basis, this one can apply for an alternative service. What's happening to those who are mobilized, but who cannot carry weapons or who request alternative service? Can they exercise this right in the real life?
It's a gray zone right now. I can explain. The Russian constitution says that everyone who is not willing to carry weapons should have an alternative service option. The constitution was adopted in 1993 during, I believe, a decade after that, there were no law on the alternative service. Finally, it was adopted, but it was adopted only for the conscripts, not for the mobilization procedure. And now the military commissariats say that there are no alternative service for the mobilization. And we have even cases when people went through alternative service 10 years ago, and now they're being mobilized for the military service in Ukraine. And they are trying to challenge this decision. We are helping them. We have already a few cases ongoing right now in different Russian regions. And clearly it should be, because the Russian Constitutional Court also told that the alternative service should be in any possible situation. It didn't say anything about the mobilization, again, because mobilization has never happened. But I'm sure that finally it's gonna be an alternative service for mobilization, but who knows when and how many these people will be forcibly put on the battlefield.
Say I'm drafted on the basis of this mobilization decree, right? Or that was put out by, was signed by Putin, the president. Say I'm drafted. I'm against, my religious beliefs that do not allow me to carry any weapons to kill people or whatever. As I hope, no one's any beliefs allowed to kill. I just hope, just so. But nobody, people in the military commissariat, in the military office, they give a lip service to my beliefs. They put me on train, and I'm getting to the front lines. What are my steps? What can I do? How can I say, no, I'm not going to carry weapons, I'm not going to kill people?
We explained that there is no legal ways not to do that.
Not to do what? Not to carry weapons?
Yes. You cannot refuse. Legally, you cannot refuse under the risk, without risk of being criminally prosecuted.
For criminally prosecuted for what?
For not committing the orders of your commanders. If your commander says take this rifle and you do not take, that's a crime. That's how it is. Legally, it is like that. Practically, you will be most likely beaten, and then you will take the rifle. Or if you're lucky enough, you would be put on some work which doesn't assume holding a rifle, like cooking or driving a van or something like that. If this is only if you're lucky enough.
I see. Have you heard anything about that Russian army is using this mercenaries like Wagner people for the purpose of during the World War II, Stalin used NKVD battalions to prevent regular soldiers running from the battlefield. Zagranatriady, which was called Zagranatriady. Katya, what will be the English for Zagranatriady? I'm asking.
There is no English word.
Yes, I'm sorry. I have no idea what's the English for Zagranatriady. I was supposed to prepare this.
Unlikely there is an English word for that. No, well, all these deserters, they told that they're being threatened to be shot to be put in jail or something like that. So there are a lot of talks about that, but there is no one case. And also, you should also understand, Yevgenia, that it's a fog of war, you know. It's very hard to prove anything. There are no evidences, no documents, no nothing. I mean, if people say something, we cannot even verify what they are saying to us. So there are so many awful stories ongoing, but it is very hard to prove anything. And we should also keep this in mind, because we are lawyers, we are dealing with the legal procedures, we need to have certain documents and evidences, etc. And it's always very hard to get, because when you are in the train going to the front line, I mean, you can do almost nothing to collect evidences, to prove anything, to have any written order from the commander. Come on, I mean, they don't do written orders, and everything will be only afterwards. With all these documents will be prepared after something happens, and definitely the way the commanders want them to be, not a soldier, and definitely not the soldier's lawyers. So
another question from Catherine Fitzpatrick. Do you know how many Russian soldiers have surrendered to Ukrainian authorities, and have there been reprisals against their families or pressure put on their families?
No, I have no idea how many. Statistics is, I mean, that's not my topic. And I doubt that you will find any relevant statistics, verifiable data on that. No one is telling the truth in this during this war, like during any other war. As to the relatives and the families, they are trying to find from both sides. Ukrainian families are contacting us, asking for help to find their husbands and fathers and brothers, etc., because they've been captured and they're being held in some Russian facilities. It could be military facilities, or it could be detention centers, etc. This and also Russian families are trying to find their relatives all the time. They are not protesting. None of them, on different reasons. Ukrainians are not protesting because, I mean, against whom? Russians are not protesting because they hope to save their relative and not to protest against the whole situation. This is not a political protest, and this will not be a political protest for sure. It's a very, local, personal, humanitarian maximum. We don't even see a rise of the soldiers' mothers movement so far, because we lawyers, human rights lawyers, dealing with criminal cases against opposition leaders and activists, we are dealing with these military cases right now. We are compensating the vacuum that suddenly existed here.
What is your explanation? Why mothers, this well-known, which became very well-known movement during the war in Chechnya, especially the second war in Chechnya? Why they keep being so silent? What happened?
Well, Actually, the rise of the soldiers' mothers movement was during the Afghanistan war in Soviet times.
Right.
They've been established in 1980s along with the memorial movement that time, and during the first Chechen war, they were very strong because they succeeded the Afghanistan war. They actually succeeded, and they actually were the leaders, the anti-military leaders that time. You should remember that better. But and during the Putin's time, the soldiers' mothers movement were declining all the time, and actually there were a lot of problems in Russian military for years right now before the war with Ukraine. No hazing anymore, no soldier slavery, no no bad stuff in Russian army for years, because we used to work 15 years ago, for example, on a series of such cases, but during last decade everything was more or less fine because Russian army was reformed. It was moved from 2 years to 1 year, much more professional, much well equipped, etc., etc. I mean, and there were no ground for this movement to operate. Plus, all those ladies that were leading, they get old, and there are no new generation in that movement so far. But if the war will continue longer for 1-2 years, it will inevitably come back, because the pressure is raising, and we will see this new civic movement of soldiers' mothers. I am absolutely sure, because so far it was volunteers, professionals, and mercenaries. Now we see people dragged into war forcibly, and we definitely will see the reaction. It will be the reaction. It will be generalized. It will be, we'll see that pressure in social movement and probably even political, but not now, too early.
Okay, are there any other questions? Because basically we have to, it's time to round up this. Any other questions? Pavel, thank you very much. I understand that, we're done with questions. Thank you so much for your time and for your most exhaustive answers to those very, very difficult questions. And I hope that, I wish you to be safe in the current environment and keep doing a great job that you're doing for so many years. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.